let's do a podcast. No, I can see it's recording. Let's go. Hello and welcome to In the Pocket, the bass guitar podcast where we get the lowdown on the low end. My name is Johnny and I'm a totally average bass player, and each week I'm joined by a different co-host to talk all about that bass. Now, the past couple of podcasts we've had no guests, no one wants to come on in and be my friend. Just me by my lonesome, just talking about bass to no one. But that's changed this week, thank goodness. Because I am lucky to be joined by the lovely Kristian Smith from bands such as Deus Mori and Volnir in Manchester. So both black metal bands. Hit pause, everyone, and go and listen to Kristian's bands because they'll bloody knock your socks off. I listened to the sample that you sent me and I was like, okay, I am in for a treat this week because I'm in with somebody who is into heavier music than me. And I like to get lots of diversity on this show. So this is great. Kristian actually reached out to me with a topic that I thought would be really interesting to talk about based on his personal experiences. And we'll get on to that later on for the big bass debate. But first of all, we need to get to know our guests, don't we? And we like to do that on this show by asking 3 simple questions. So the first one being, how would you describe your bass playing in 3 words?
I'd say pragmatic, technical, and I don't want to say melodic, but I'd say colourful, if that makes sense.
Colourful is a much nicer word. I love it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to say, it's kind of a bit torn between like practical, but I kind of thought maybe that doesn't really make sense for me. I didn't really think that was the right way. I kind of say pragmatic, probably because it's kind of how I approach bass. I'm probably not really saying anything new here, but I do play very often a supporting role, especially in the 2 black metal bands I'm in. That's what we've really been doing for the past 3 years. Well, technically 4, but 3 years has been black metal. And very often what you are doing is you're holding down the low end to what the guitars are doing. So you are following, very often you're following root notes. You're kind of adding the low end to...
They're following us, mate.
Yeah,
they're following us the whole way. All guitarists,
yeah,
we make it up,
really.
And then they have to do their thing and just layer on top.
Yeah,
and the real people can hear what's going on underneath. I can't hear the bass. Don't know what the bass is doing. Yeah,
the rhythm section are the ones who carry it. Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah. So there's a lot of element of there's a big part that I'm kind of more serving the song in a way. I don't really have as much room to kind of break out as I would say. Let's say if I was in like when I was doing rock and alt rock, or let's say if it's a different genre, let's say I was doing jazz or funk, for example. I don't really have as much room to kind of break out. I kind of really have to keep, especially with metal in general, but extreme metal and the stuff we're doing.
Totally down to the genre, that is, because like with rock, you can totally go out on your own line, and I do all the time when like if there's a verse and there's just power chords, it's the same note. I there's loads of room there for me to be in the pocket and do something really interesting in the pocket. Can you tell why the show is called In the Pocket? Amazing, cool. I like those 3, and like you say, you're technical, but you follow what everyone else is doing because it serves that song. That's what we're here to do. Thank you so much. So for our second question, we like to ask, what bass? I can see, viewers at home won't be able to see this, but I can see a few guitars hanging on the wall in the background. And I want to know what bass is your number 1.
The number 1, absolutely hands down, will probably never ever change, is the Yamaha BB615.
Oh, nice. Now that is a bass that, is kind of more on the traditional side that people might not necessarily picture it with black metal. So why the BB? Why does it work?
again, it's to an extent, it's a little bit accidental in not maybe not accidental, but it's the gig I've kind of gigged with exclusively for the last 6 years. I have other gigs, maybe kind of my arsenal was chopped and changed, but this has been the most consistent one. It's the first 5-string I had. I've used it for, like I said, for pretty much every gig I've done in the past 6 years. And yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic all rounder. The sound it's got a really very versatile sound. It's active sound was fantastic. I've changed the active sound. It's not entirely original Yamaha. There is a dark glass preamp in there now. Yeah, there is the active sound though. I really enjoyed that. Once I heard the active sound compared to like passive, I was like, wow, this is like I can't.
Yeah,
can I ever really go back to the passive sounds after this?
When you've got an active bass or one that like has active pickups in it, or a preamp, should I say, yeah, and there's a passive switch, half the time you're thinking, why would I even bother? Like when these pickups are voiced to have this preamp, why would I have anything else? That being said, I am a big lover of a passive bass and just having this flat, consistent sound that then I color things using pedals and things like that around it. That's kind of more my thing. But yeah, when I've got an active bass, I'm very rarely using the passive mode. So I completely understand what you mean by that. How do you find the neck on the Yamaha? Because you're playing fast, playing some fast stuff.
I love the neck on that. I really enjoy the neck. It is it's either G or C. I think it's more like a C, but it gives me a chance to kind of like, I kind of have like the U shape in my hands. So up the neck is a little bit different because I'm kind of grabbing it with a bass, not with my bass, with my thumb, I should say. So yeah, I find the neck is really comfortable to play, and I've got a nice surface to kind of grab onto when I'm doing like my more melodic or my more colourful, I move up and down the fretboards and across the fretboard kind of thing. It's no, I really enjoy it. It's yeah, I've
He's
I don't really think I can say. I don't really think I've ever got any real complaints about the playability of it, actually, or the comfort of it. That I kind of would like somewhere a bit more comfortable to put my thumb, I suppose, at the back when I'm picking, because the curve. It's got a curved pickup at the back where the neck is. Not very comfortable or stable for putting your finger on, but I normally play in the middle anyway. So
I was gonna say, like, when I'm picking, I'm very much in the middle over that middle pickup, as opposed to like right by the bridge. Some people are right by the bridge, but yeah, not me, and not you by the sounds of it.
I kind of like quite a lot of the string, I like the grindy sounds of strings slapping against the fretboard, especially when it's pick and finger playing. I really like that aggressive sound, and you can't really get that at the back of the neck. It's good if you're kind of doing a lot of different genres. Obviously, if you're kind of doing something, let's say, blues or funk or something like that, you might want to sometimes go to the back of the neck pickup to get a different sound, have a bit more punch. But the stuff I do, I'll just sit in the middle between the pickups, and that's
it's
sort of fine.
Where the tension of the string is, that's where you're getting the maximum impact to really make those notes sing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm very jealous, and I can see it there, and it looks very beautiful. If you guys want to go and check it out for yourselves, head over to Kristian's Instagram page where you can have a look at it in its full beauty. What's your handle on there, mate?
Skogen _bassist.
There you go. Go and check it out. So our next question, the last question, is why bass? Why did you pick up the bass in the first place?
Similar story to quite a few of us. Started on guitar before I grew up, but I kind of always had an interest in bass, though. Even when I was kind of first getting into guitar, mainly was because of Black Sabbath. Guitar was because of Tony Iommi, absolute hero. I love that man so much. But Geezer Butler as well. I was listening to him talking about how he plays bass, how I totally I mean Geezer Brother, they were the ones who kind of brought me into it. I wouldn't have probably picked a guitar or bass without either of them. But it's like I did start on guitar first, but I always did have quite a big interest in bass, and that, again, like I said, Geezer Brother to thank for that. So I played guitar for a couple of years, but then I started playing bass. I bought a bass because I kind of wanted to try something different, and I really wanted to. I decided I was going to learn the bass intro for NIB. I swore to myself, I'm going to get a bass. I'm going to learn that bass solo, because that was one of my favorite things of all time, is listening to the bass solo on that. It blew my mind when I was younger. Took me best part of 10 years, but I can do it now. It took me a while, but I can finally do it now.
I could stop playing now.
Yeah, even though obviously with that sort of, as well as thing is, it looked like so technical and complicated to me when I was first starting out. Then it looked at, I realized when I realized how blues work and how improvising and soloing work, I actually realized it's a lot easier than it realized. He was just, playing, he was just improvising, basically. That's what it was. But it took me a long time to really sit down and think, right, okay, I'm going to nail this note for note. It took me a long time to get around to that, but finally did it. So yeah, I was started playing at a jam night near where I lived, and I would get on bass every now and again because the room was flooded with guitarists every single night. At one point, I think there was 7 guitarists playing in one jam.
Oh no!
In this tiny room,
worst nightmare.
In this tiny room,
I could just see them now, just all going back to their amps, turning themselves up a little bit, or turning the presence and the treble up just a little bit to poke out through the mix. You're like, no.
Yeah, it was a sight to behold. But I remember one time I kind of walked in and thought, well, I might go and play a bit of guitar, and I just saw all these guitars. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the bar, get a drink, and have a chat with some folk, and come back later when some of them have disappeared. But yeah, I started playing bass in these jams when people would kind of bring their own songs. They would bring in covers, indie, folk, rock, punk, metal, all sorts. And I kind of just thought to myself, I really, really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy doing this. I find myself I'm really good at it. I get actually more fulfillment out of doing it than as a guitarist. I really enjoy the supporting role. I really love the fact that I can kind of not just playing the root notes. I can kind of break. I love the feeling of breaking out and doing things different other than just do.
But also, when you're doing a jam as well, when you feel like you can really gel with other people,
Yeah,
like bass is like the perfect place to do that, because you're still being melodic, but then you're gelling with the drums and you're working with the guitars. You definitely get that like communal feeling, I suppose. Whereas you're not being too showy. You're really doing what works for the whole thing, which is kind of my vibe. But sorry, I totally interrupted you then.
No, it's fine. I think that's a good point as well. What was great about the jams, I think, was so formulaic for me, not formulaic. What really helped me develop as well was the fact that I suppose if you went to a band's rehearsal and you just started playing, experimented all kinds of different stuff, you would probably be like, right, okay, stop. We need to get to the song. You are there to do a job effectively. But with jam nights and any kind of like jam of any sort like this, you can experiment with so many different things. You can play basically load of wrong notes and you can learn something from it, but you can't do that in your band's practice, for example, because if you did that, you'd probably get kicked out quite quickly, or
unless you're playing jazz.
Well, yeah. So yeah, at that point I picked up bass and never really looked back. I was playing bass as well in a band, and I brought my guitar along, and the guitarist brought the guitar along, and he was much better than me, so I decided to pick up bass and decided to know my place. I knew my place after about 5 minutes with the guy. So yeah, that's when I started playing it more, and then that's when I kind of developed into the role of bass player more. Then I started playing at these jam nights more because there was too many guitarists, not really enough bassists, and I like the idea as well of, I can make more of a niche for myself as a bass player.
And you
I
realise
like this
that
niche.
it was actually a place to rise to, not a place to like below yourself to.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not
I
going to I'm not going to play the bass. No, you need to be like, yes, I'm going to play the bass. But
yeah,
yeah, it's it sometimes it's a familiar tale, but it's always one that ends up so positive and that people really
yeah.
find their way and gel with it. So yeah, love it. Thank you so much. So I hope that
No
has got
worries.
got the audience to know you a little better. So we're just gonna jump straight into it then. Let's hit it off with our first question. This is where the musical interlude will go. Oh, nice. I said I'd put one in. That's it now.
That is from the
Perfect.
Disco Godfather as well, so don't get copyrighted. That is.
It's fine. Don't make much money off these anyway. It's fine. So the first question comes from William Garcia, good friend on Instagram, who has asked, which is more important when you pick up a new bass, the neck radius or the profile? So we spoke a little bit earlier about the neck on that Yamaha behind you, um, and the reason that I actually sold my old BB, old as I had it like earlier this year, um, was the neck actually. I found myself falling out of love with it because of the radius on there. Honestly, I felt like it felt a bit too wide and not really just what I just didn't really gel with it after over a prolonged period of time. At first, I was like, "Yeah, this is nice." I was getting on with it, and then I think I started playing my Stingray a bit too much, and was like, "Oh, this is where it's at for me." And then just kind of started resenting it a little bit, if I'm honest. But going back to the question, for you, what is more important? What do you look for? Can you put up with saying that the radius isn't quite right, but the profile feels nice, or vice versa?
I think for me, it's definitely neck profile I'd kind of prioritize. I mean, I've never really paid much attention to radius, if I'm honest. So I've always felt neck profile kind of makes a lot more sense to me. I would kind of focus on that. All my basses have much of kind of do have a C shape
Mm.
neck profile because, like I said, I like being able to have a thumb that can fit flat on the back. I can kind of get a really nice grip, really nice feel to it. Because I think if I had like a V shape, something poking out in the middle, that'd really make me I'd get really angry if I did that, or kind of like poking into my hand. I would not enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean,
Particularly as well, because I don't really put my thumb over the top of the neck either. I can imagine with the V, that would make a bit more sense as well, because you're kind of gripping, but I don't really play like that. The only time I ever play like that is if I'm at the very low end of the string near the nuts, because that's typically when I'm kind of playing open strings or very low range. And also because I'm thrashing around a lot on the stage. So I kind of need to hold everything stable to have any
he
chance
said
of
to
playing
grab
it.
onto.
Yeah. So yeah, I would really, I'd kind of, without something a bit too ignorant, I would kind of just play the bass and see, does it feel right? I wouldn't worry too much about the radius or the profile. I kind of pick it up. I wouldn't let it put me off. I kind of pick it up and think, does this feel right to me? Do I gel with this instrument?
100%. And that is where because I'm not a spec guy. I'm not like, right, I'm going to build my custom bass. It's going to be this. This is the radius. This is going to be over. I don't. Sorry to anyone that's like that. That wasn't my impression of you.
Yeah.
Just offended everyone. I mean that I'm very much that the same, and I don't have a preferred neck type in general. It has to suit the bass and what that bass is providing. I've got short scale on the wall behind me. I don't want that to be the same neck profile as my jazz bass. I want it to feel differently. I want each of those basses to play differently and inspire me to play differently. That's the point in having different basses for me anyway. Some people out there will have like 3 jazz basses and they're all the same, and that's great, fine. But for me, I like to have each one has a bit of a different role and that's why I I feel like I have to justify owning them basically. So I like them to have a role and to feel different. So I don't have a necessary preferred. Yeah, it's got to be this, got to be this, got to be this. That being said, in terms of like profile, I definitely do gravitate towards your kind of modern C and that kind of shape. I had the Ibanez Talman TMB 100, and it felt more like a D shape. So it was like, I mean, you can imagine like a C and a D.
Yeah.
It just felt fatter, but still had this quite a slenderish radius. But it was definitely weird at first. So I noticed it straight away. I did get used to it after a while, but it's not a neck profile that I would prefer to have for my full-time bass. So I think like a C shape is what I would go for profile, and radius. I think I used to think like, yeah, the smaller the better, and that's what I tell everyone. So it's all the smaller the better. But now, if I've got a P bass, I'll kind of want one with a slightly bigger radius because I want it to be a bit more limiting. Because I think that's where P basses sound good, is when things are almost, they're more simple, and the things you play are a bit more aggressive, or for me, in the genre that I kind of gel towards. I don't know what it is about a P bass. That's just what works for me, and that's what I want. I don't want a really slim neck on a P bass. Basically, I'm dancing around this question. What's more important to me? I think probably radius. I think profile I can get used to, like I did on that Ibanez. I do have ones that I prefer, but if I had to be like, yeah, you've got the perfect profile or the perfect radius, probably gonna go with radius, because if the radius, if it's too big, but the size is fine. Like my Jackson I had was a very slim profile, but it was a massive 5-string neck, and it was still nice and comfy and playable. That neck was really nice, actually, thinking about it. And now I'm regretting selling the bass. Great, thanks. But yeah, I kind of thinking about basses I've had in the past and applying it to this question.
Yeah, I kind of never really even thought much about radiusing before I looked at the question. I wasn't really I said normally I wouldn't say I'm a specs guy, but I definitely try and lean towards the more practical side of specifications, like making sure it's comfortable to play, making sure it's easy to play. Not as in you don't really want to put like unnecessary or arbitrary barriers in front of yourself. You want a bass that is ergonomic and healthy to play. That's the most important thing. And I think an element of that will be you just got to pick it up and play. Maybe I don't want to kind of dismiss the question. Maybe I'd say, is this the right question to ask? I would say maybe where you kind of have to pick up the bass, and as long as you got good posture and good technique, technique that is I say in this case ergonomic, not something that's going to be problematic for yourself, making life more difficult for yourself unnecessarily. You kind of have to just pick it up and play it. That's kind of what would kind of be a little bit more important to me.
It's never like, I never go to, like I said, think about the figures or look for something specific. I'm always like, pick it up, play it. Does it feel right? Okay, why doesn't this feel right? Okay, I'm always putting the feel first over anything else. And I say that in all the videos I do. Like the sounds I can work easier to improve. The feel is the most important.
Yeah.
And that's from a playability wise and all the practical reasons, but also from like an emotional reason, because if I'm not enjoying playing this, I'm not going to sound good playing it, and I'm not going to want to play it. So what's the point?
Yeah, you shouldn't. One thing I would say is you shouldn't be uncomfortable playing your instrument. If someone said, this is the easy spec to play, and you're giving it and you hate playing it, what's the point? We do this because we love what we do. We feel good about it. If you don't feel good about it, what's the point of giving ourselves instruments or gear that we hate or we don't like? We should have that that feel and that intuitive connection to the instrument, so that, because otherwise, if we didn't like it, what would be the point of picking it up?
Exactly. I in the, like, stuff that I review, I mostly try and get stuff that actually I just like, or, like, that I think I'm gonna like. Not because I just always wanna make good, like, positive reviews. I like I like giving a bad one, like, but I like it because it surprises me, 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I've got something to say about this," you know? But yeah, I always want to like something, of course, and the most of the stuff that I buy is because I think I'm gonna like it. I think this is gonna be a keeper, and if not, I'll sell it. It's fine. But yeah, very drawn out answer to this question, but you know, food for thought for lots of people out there, I'm sure. And thank you so much, Bill, for the question. Let's move on to the news. Okay, this week's news. So the first bit comes in with some new gear, which was launched on the 19th of November. So what's that, like last week sometime? By the time we're recording this. So Justin Chancellor has got a signature Fuzz and Noir pedal from Dunlop. Now, Justin is the bass player of Tool, which has a very distinct bass sound and the overall sound of Tool. This pedal, I've actually only heard it within the promo video which they put out, which I'm going to tell you to pause this podcast throughout this podcast. Go and find Dunlop's YouTube channel or Instagram page and go and look at this advert for this pedal, because it's incredible. It makes me want to buy it.
That,
And it's £300.
That advert was absolutely brilliant. And the trail at the ending of it as well. Everything about that advert was brilliant.
There's like a minute of credits afterwards of like disclaimers of like things it's going to do for you. And guys, it's only £300, but it will give you an erection that lasts for more than 4 hours. So you know it's worth it apparently. But yeah, I was a big fan of this that was in there. So what does this pedal do? It's fuzz and wah, basically. So it's wah pedal with a fuzz built in. So we've got two different wah voicings in there, and then this UK gritty sounding traditional fuzz, which Justin's quite well known for. Are you much of a Tool fan?
Yeah, I'd say I've not really listened to them heavily, but I kind of am. You know, I loved 10,000 Days. I really enjoyed. I remember the bass lesson I was shown to play 46 and 2. I really liked. Yeah, I kind of like the mid-noughties stuff. I really liked that sound. I really liked the music. I really enjoyed it. I didn't really enjoy new album though. I have to say, wasn't a fan. Wasn't worth the wait, unfortunately. But like I said, you know, 10,000 Days, for example, absolutely stunning album. Iconic bass work on that album, I'd say.
Yeah, and that's, you know, when you know a band is so well known and known for their bass playing as well. You know, that's, I know I'm biased because I'm a bass player, but I'm not a big Tool guy. I don't know lots about the band and I don't listen to them that much. But I have heard of them. And I do straight away. I recognize that bass sound and I know of the band because of the bass playing, you know, and that says something, you know. So for Dunlop to be backing him in this way is incredible. And yeah, Fuzz and Noir together, I think, is amazing. I really like combining modulation effects with like distortions at the minute. So I always used to run chorus and distortion, but the minute my go-to is a phaser and distortion. So I want to hear this pedal, and I'd love to do some experimenting. The expression pedal on there, you're going to have so much fun with this thing, and you can have them all separate as well. You can have it just the fuzz, just the wah, or mix them together. So,
and there's an independent. Like, I watched a review. It was on Bass the Void. It's by a guy called Jamie, and I've completely forgotten the last name, but it's on Bass the World, and he did a review of it. There's also like an independent switch you can put on it as well, where it will engage. I have to remember this. Basically, you can kind of run any combination of wah and fuzz, and so you can, yeah. For the independent ones, remember you engage the wah and the fuzz. When you disengage it, it goes back to. I can't remember. I just can't remember the logic of it now. I'll have to kind of write it down. It's one of those things I think you'd have to kind of pick it up and experiment with it. Because you said you have got a lot of different kind of combinations. It's not just say your standard wah pedal where very often it's just kind of press it down, wah, 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 press it down, off, back to bypass. There's a lot more going on to it, which I think is really cool. I like the fact that you've got all these different options. You're not limited to one box. It's like, right, press it, fuzz and noir, and then off, bypass. There's a lot more going on to it than that, which I really, really like. I think that's brilliant.
Because there's going to be loads of different ways that people will use that pedal, isn't there? There's going to be just people that want it to be on and off, or people that are going to want to use that expression pedal more freely. So yeah, cool. It's a cool pedal, and I want to hear more of it. So Dunlop, if you're listening, you're not, but if you are, it's Christmas. Send it my way. Come on, let's do this. Okay, let's move on to the next bit of news, which is quite an exciting one, and I love this time of year, getting towards the big C, Christmas, because we start getting all these lists coming out of the best gear of 2021 and the top basses and pedals and all this stuff, and it makes me very excited. And then it makes you realize of how little I've actually played of the gear that's come out this year. Wow, that rhymed. Incredible. So I noticed that Reverb have put up a list of the top selling items, and they've done a list for bass as well. So they've done the top selling basses of 2021. So this isn't really news as such. I suppose it is because they've released an article on it, but I thought it'd just be interesting to take a look at this top 20 that we've got here, and yeah, just run through them. So I'm going to quickly run through them all, and then we'll have a chat. So, starting at number 20, we've got the Epiphone Thunderbird 4, Squier Classic Vibe 60s Jazz Bass, Fender Standard Jazz Bass 1991 to 2008, Ibanez TMB 100, Squier Affinity Bronco joint with the Classic Vibe 70s Jazz Bass, Fender Offset Series Mustang PJ, Fender JB62 Jazz Bass Reissue made in Japan, Gretsch Junior Jet 2, Rickenbacker 4003S, Hofner Ignition Pro Violin Bass, Fender Precision Bass 1970 to 1983, Squier Affinity Jazz Bass, Fender American Professional 2 Precision Bass, Ibanez SR 300, 300? Yes, 300E, Squier Classic Vibe Bass 6. And then we're in the top 5 now. So number 5 is the Rickenbacker 4003, Ibanez GSRM 20, Fender Player Series Jazz Bass, Squier Affinity Precision Bass PJ, and the top spot is the Fender Player Series Precision Bass. Whoa! Big old long list on there, and
a lot of Fender.
That is a lot of Fender.
A lot of Fender
so
on there.
Which,
so much Fender.
Isn't surprising, really.
No.
And, lots of Squier as well, which, is obviously under the Fender umbrella. Yeah. But, yeah, really interesting. I love seeing this just to see what the trends are like this year and what's going on. Nothing really that's too wild. I will say that I was surprised how high up. At number 6 is the Squier Bass 6. Now, I imagine that's a lot of guitarists buying that Bass 6 as well, because I feel like the use of the Bass 6 isn't really in bass players' realm anymore. It's more people wanting to be a bit grungier and have that guitar that's a full octave lower to give them this whole different sound. I know when I had a Bass 6, that's how I preferred to play it. It's more like a guitar.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw one years ago in a Denmark street in London. I saw one of them, and it was just like the coolest thing ever. I just thought I could make so many sounds with that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if I looked at it again, I kind of think it'd be a nice novelty, but I don't think for me, I don't think I'd kind of use it as a serious, at least not for the kind of things I approach in my approach to bass playing now. But I can imagine if you put a lot of distortion and modulation on that, you get some very, very interesting sounds
Oh, they're
out of it.
so gnarly. They're surprisingly like diverse into what kind of things you can get out of it. But like, I'd just always be going back to the heaviest distortion I've got and just playing that open note. Like, oh my god, it's so good. I had the Schecter Hellcat, and yeah, there was humbuckers that could split, and it was awesome. But I did the same thing. I bought it because I was like, number one, I want to review this. Number two, I just really want to play this and see what fun stuff I can write with it. But then that same thing happened where I just wasn't using it, and like I always buy guitars thinking, right, this is going to inspire something amazing, and then like I'm like, I didn't really gel with it that much. So, and a lot of my creativity kind of comes from that as well. So yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. Yeah, I saw the Gretsch on there, which I talked about a little bit earlier at number 13. Really popular short scale bass. I'm surprised there aren't loads more short scales in here. There's only the Mustang offset Fender, which is really, really popular. But short scales have been quite fashionable recently, so I'm surprised like even the Squire one isn't even in here. Both the jazz bass and the oh no, they're just both jazz basses are in there as well, but from the Classic Vibe range. But interestingly, number 2, Squire Affinity Precision PJ. I'd love to
BJ.
know if that was the 2021 version or if it's just kind of the older one as well. I know they've probably sold really well, those new ones, but I can't imagine they would have sold so well that they are the second most bought thing on Reverb. I don't know. I might be wrong, but it doesn't specify the year, whereas some of the others do. So maybe it's just kind of all-encompassing.
Yeah. All that matters to me, though, it's got PJ. That is the best combination. I absolutely adore that combo.
Yeah,
PJ.
it's cracking. I don't think I want there to be a time where there isn't a PJ in my collection, just because and I feel like PJ comes into fruition most in a band situation and when you're playing. So I turned up with my G&L SB2, which is a PJ, to a band practice the other day, and I was pretty set on just using the P pickup. I was like, how I'd been using it at home, really like that mid-rangey growl. I'm a P bass guy, love it. And then when I was at practice, I was like, I feel like I want a little bit more punch. I was messing around with some settings. I thought, maybe we'll just dial in the bridge pickup. That was it. That's all I needed. It gives it this bit of crispness that's on there. And a lot of these are actually PJ basses that have sold really well. So it's no mystery that it's a great pickup configuration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nothing else I think really is too surprising on this list. There's a huge range of price ranges on here. From basses that probably cost closer to £2,000 to some that cost barely £200. So yeah, really diverse list and interesting. Let me know in a comment down below if you are one of these people that has contributed to this list with a purchase, because I bet there are some of you out there that have done exactly that. I've owned a couple of these this year, and I've still got one of them. So yeah, thanks Reverb for letting us know and seeing what's trendy, because it's always interesting stuff. Lovely job. Cool. So let us now move on to our second question. Musical interlude. Nice. So, question 2 comes in and says, "Oh my god, I've lost I've deleted the name that said it. Hang on, I can't not do this person justice. I can't not read the name out. Come on, Johnny. Here we go. There it is. Okay, so this next question comes from username Bert Allen Peter on Instagram, who has asked, how much music theory do you actually know? How did you learn it? And how important is it for a rock bassist? Now, a rock bassist is what I consider myself, someone who's primarily playing with a pick and is playing, like we said earlier, kind of a supporting role in supporting the other members in the band. And, you know, is that to say that we take a back seat in the music theory and that we don't contribute, or is that even necessary? You know, this will divide people massively, and I sit firmly on one side of the fence. Kristian, let's start with you. What do you know music theory, and how important do you think it is?
Yeah, I do know music theory. I mean, I kind of only know, I suppose if you kind of look at all music theory, we can kind of, I only know like a small spectrum of on and little bits of them. You can kind of get from like the really basic stuff to these super obscure, like the really obscure, super big brain level. And you kind of go into micro details and stuff, and you can kind of go a little bit kind of, there's so many layers of abstraction you can get to sometimes as well. It's not really, it doesn't really become applicable. It's interesting. It's not something that should be ignored, but in terms of it can get a little bit crazy. But I would say know a decent amount of theory. In the rock context, I would say theory does make, I would say theory definitely helps. Just to clarify with the question, is the question saying, do you need theory?
Well, it's the question is, how much music theory do you know? How did you learn it? And how important is it for a rock bassist?
Oh, okay. So how important it is. Right. Okay. Yes, so I say I know a kind of a decent amount. How I learned it initially, I actually played piano for many years, best part of 10 years. I did not end up, I didn't progress very far in those 10 years, unfortunately. One of my biggest regrets, I wasn't a very good learner or musician at the time. It's only really when I was 18 that everything kind of started to really take off. But that's when I learned my basics. I learned, my A to G, basic timings, how to read sheet music. I learned my
A to Z then. A to Z. You wouldn't know unless you know real music theory.
The Z note. Ooh, that's a spicy note, my friends. The A to G, A to G sharp. I just say on my music theory, but that was very basic. I never really got past, major and minor. How I learned it was I started. Really, I just went on. Partly it was from my go-to music teachers. I actually kind of have a dedicated bass and guitar teacher because I was being taught, rock skills. I was kind of taught how to kind of break out of just doing the copying the root notes. So, like, exams, for example, you'd have sections where you'd have to like do your own bass line and do a solo of some sort. So I was taught that, okay, this is how you, these are your shapes, these are your scales, these are your arpeggios. This is how you do. This is how you write your own section. So I kind of started doing my own research. It really interested me, and I kind of want to learn about new ways of doing things, new ideas, new ways of doing things. Effectively expanding my arsenal. Learning about modes really interested me because I only really knew major, minor when I was doing music. Then I heard about mixed Lydian and Lydian and Phrygian, and I was just like, oh my god, there's so many new ways of doing things. I was really fascinated by it, and then I started getting sucked into more and more of it. And a lot of it, like I said, I kind of just did it off my own back with support from teachers. And then coming on to like, do you need it as a rock bassist? I know there's a lot of people who will say, I would kind of say to people, I like theory. I'll start, talking about sometimes, well, I say I'll talk. Sometimes I can get a little bit overexcited, and I'll start going to really fine details. I start talking about intervals, major, minor, seven chords, Phrygian modes, and people all that. And often the kind of stop response to that might be like, I don't use theory, I just play with feel. And with rock, though, that is perfectly fine, though. It's perfectly fine to just do by theories and using your ears. At the end of the day, you have to play what is good. You can't. I'll expand on this, but you can't play everything into. You can't. If, let's say, you're playing in E minor, for example, and you've got to play notes around the C, you don't just have to play in C mixolydian. You don't have to just play in E minor. You might put some notes in there that's a C sharp and it feels good, even though it shouldn't work. It shouldn't work in E minor. It doesn't matter. What matters is, does it sound good? And that's why I think a lot of people can just kind of think, okay, why do I need theory then if I can just use my ears? But with theory, it allows you to look at music in a way you wouldn't normally, because you can be a good musician by just, and a good songwriter, particularly if you're just doing everything by feel and by ear, and also especially, from the heart as well, especially with something like, say, rock and roll, where everything kind of you're making your own music. And that's obviously a beautiful thing. But if you want to try doing things in a way you might not otherwise do, when you apply theory, if let's say you looked into, say, okay, rather than just playing in E minor, what about say your rock band, for example, rather than just doing everything in E minor, for example, why not try Phrygian? Why not make yourself play along that scale, and you might generate a sound you might not have otherwise generated.
It sounds like the way that the way you're explaining it really well. Sounds like it can be used as a tool to unlock ideas that you might not necessarily think about because you hadn't put the thought into that before. I said before, I sit very firmly on one side of the fence, and that is because I don't really know music theory. Don't get me wrong, I got an A at GCSE, but it's gone out of my head now. It's gone. And I was very much I know A to G, like you said, but if somebody's like, right, can you play an A? Obviously I know that's a very simple one, but I might be like, yep, I can. Hang on, okay, there it is. I don't know it instantly. Yes, that's it, and all of these types of things. And the same with chords and progressions and things like that. I'm very much playing on feel and sound. And like you said, a lot of people that have written lots of songs in the past, especially as well, probably have written them without knowing that it's this scale or that's this. Like if you ask them, they'd probably be like, no, I just played it because I thought it sounded good. But there's a difference between doing that and then understanding the underpinning knowledge as to why that sounds good. It's very different approaches, which both have pros and cons, I think, because you can't, if you're going to approach it from the aspect of, I'm only going to do it from theory, then you might lose some of that feel or like say that the heart that goes into it. But then also it can act as a set of rules that you can be too rigid towards, and it's made to be broken, and it goes both ways, I think.
The example I'd say, breaking rules, for example, I'd say, is Bach. I'll use an example. He broke so many rules in his later years of composing, but he wrote incredible music. Like the prelude to the Happy Cavalier, for example, starts in C major, but there's so many notes that should not work in there, but they get worked into it. But it's a beautiful piece of music. To an extent, sometimes actually, if you want to break rules, learning the theory is great, because then you can actually more readily break the rules when you need to.
It could almost speed up processes, couldn't it?
It also, once you kind of know, especially if you kind of apply it to the fretboard as well, the way you visually start looking at the fretboard changes. The kind of you can also start to find, if you know what a minor third is, you can find many different ways of playing that minor third, and that can lead you again down paths that you wouldn't normally do so. And I think another thing that needs as well is that there's another huge advantage of theory is that it's a common language that we all have. So the analogy I would use in this case, for example, is that I'm a Norwegian speaker, for example, and I can get along speaking Norwegian to Swedish speakers. We can get along, but it's not difficult. There's things we might understand. We have to clarify things. It gets very tricky and problematic. But if we use English, say, as a lingua franca, we can all understand each other much more easily because we've got a shared language now. That might be a little bit convoluted, but that's kind of my way of explaining it. And yeah, say you're in a band, for example, and you're a rock bassist, and you might go join a band, you might get an opportunity to play with a band who give you a load of sheet music and say, right, learn this. Or they might start talking to you in very theoretical terms.
Sounds like my worst nightmare.
But then that's the thing, though. It's like it gives you a way of working with different musicians. There might be people who work, when you have a shared language, it speeds up the process massively. Especially, I think more of the bands, I think definitely, if it would say, songwriting, for example, knowing what a bar is, for example, or a triplet or a gallop or a herta, you can say that to someone rather than saying, okay, if I said to you the fast bit, well, in black metal, for example, there's lots of fast bits in songs that aren't, there's a lot of tremolo playing in black metal, for example. If I told you, oh yeah, the fast bit, it's like, well, there's fast bits in black metal songs that are done in eighth notes, or that doesn't mean it's fast. But if I say tremolo, that means you're referring to very fast, rapidly picked sections.
Even like basic things like me and my partner, we're both into music. She's not a musician, I am. And so I find there's parts that I'll say about something that even with my limited knowledge, I've been in bands and in recording situations long enough to know more about theory from a practical point of view. And like you say, like being able to communicate with each other in that way does break down a barrier and helps us to get to the solution quicker. Because we've got our own language to talk about it. And that's why I talk to her about some things. She's like, what's that? I don't know. What do you mean a triplet and a gallop? And I'm like, oh, because it's going like this. And so, yeah, I totally see the benefits in that regard.
Yeah, it's I will say, since I love theory, I love all that kind of stuff, but I will say I also have like a recording project, which is a porno grind project, and I don't use any theory in that. I just get a guitar, drop tune it, and just play disgusting, horrible, awful noise.
It sounds like every recording I've ever done.
Oh no, what I record this are crimes against music. But it is sometimes fun. Like I have to, I'm thinking in very theoretical terms in both my bands, even though I sometimes do play by ear. It is fun sometimes to actually just, abandon that whole technical, clever, major, minor, seventh route and just play horrible noises. It's
yeah. And I think that's a good point, though, because I think it all comes down to enjoyment and what actually you're doing it for, or what you find interesting. Because, like, for you say you find it really interesting. You love researching it when you're being taught. Whereas that's fantastic because you're passionate about it and you want to learn more and better yourself through all of that. For me, I'm all self-taught, and so I don't really have that underpinning knowledge. And so now for me to go and like learn it, it's a big slog, and I feel myself losing that enjoyment and that passion through learning that side of it. So ultimately, I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer to this question. I just thought it was really interesting to talk about, especially in the terms of rock as well, because it depends on, everyone's different on how they write and how they approach music and what kick they get out of it. If I'm sat there doing a load of theory, for me personally, it's going to put me down. I'm going to want to play less, and that's me stuck in me old ways, and which sounds like the opposite because I'm saying that I don't do theory.
I would say the main advice I would say I'd give on this, though, for both for the theory nuts and for the people who aren't theory minded, I would say is that if you are theory minded, don't think less of people just because they don't know it, because that's going to be very destructive, and it's just not a nice way of kind of looking at people you play, or even just other people. There's no need to look down on people just because they don't know it. But on the other side, I would say, if you don't know things, if you struggle, if you don't like theory, you struggle, you don't know much, that's perfectly fine. But I would say don't make a glory out of ignorance. Don't be like, I don't use theory because I'm a good rock and roll musician because I play from the heart and I don't do theory. That's a really unhealthy way of approaching any kind of learning as well. As a musician, you have to open yourself up to all kinds of different sounds, genres, styles, ways of approaching things. You should try and the more you expose yourself to, the better you'll be. There's no value in glorifying ignorance.
I think there's a difference between glorifying ignorance and being content. Like you said, if you're perfectly happy with the way that you are, then that's fine. But you don't need to poo-poo someone else's enjoyment out of it or the way that they think about it, because it's going to work differently for different people. And people will argue until the end of time about topics like this, about what is right and what is wrong. At the end of the day, there is no right and wrong, because that's the beauty of music. And we're getting wider and heartfelt about this. That's what it all comes down to, and we all need to pick each other up and help each other if we want to learn from each other, or if we don't, that's also fine. I think that people just need to get along when it comes to this kind of stuff. But you make absolute sense and massively valid points in there, and it's even broadened my horizons a bit. So that's why I love doing this stuff, because I learn more, and that's why I'm doing it all, really, to be honest. So I just for selfish benefit, Okay, speaking of selfish benefit, I'm going to listen to some beautiful bass tones now as we move into our next segment called That Tone You Own. Stop singing licensed music, damn it.
So you have to listen to that track, the Disco Godfather, the 11-minute version. It hits differently. It's so good, honestly.
Well, I've got my evening sorted after this now, so thank you so much. So each week, when I've got a guest on here, or whether I haven't, I like to bring along a tone. So this week, we've got Kristian as our guest. So he has given me a tone that he considers his signature sound, or one that he's just enjoying at the moment. And we take a listen to it, break it down, talk about what the gear elements went into it, what part of the song it serves, and all of this malarkey. Let's stop talking right now and have a listen to it. So as you can hear from that, that is, number one, some fast playing, some very precise playing. And I can hear, with my musical bass player brain, big brain, AKA, that I can hear certain elements of what I suspect is going on within there. And I love when I can hear that about a bass line where I'm like, oh, now I can tell, sounds like it's being played with fingers. And it sounds like, obviously, there's distortion on there. And I can tell that, I love breaking things like that. Yeah. I feel so proud of myself when I can hear that. So there's a lot of that with this line. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is a prediction that I have about this, and that is about what you're doing about compression, because I'm curious. Is there much compression on it? Or
there is some compression, yeah. I confess I bought a compressor this year. I didn't have much of a chance to experiment with it. Because of personal circumstances, which we'll come on to later. But yeah, I've got a Taurus Tux compressor, the Doctor compressor, and Mark II. Compression of that, out of 8, we've got 5. Don't know why it's 8 out of 10. 10 would be not easy to work with. It's kind of 5 out of 8. Punch, we've got. Okay, now we haven't got any numbers in the bottom one. I've just realised we've got numbers in the top 2 dials and no numbers in the bottom 2 dials. That's interesting. Yeah, level set to 6 out of 8. Compression set to 5 out of 8. Range is, I'd estimate, about 40%. punch as well, and it has got a character tube setting on it. But yeah, we have got a bit of compression going on there, which is something I started using more recently, particularly for bass lines like this with my fingers started playing.
One thing I noticed straight away about that tone, I was like, wow, that is consistent sounding. But I bet actually that compressor is just elevating it a little bit, because it sounds like you have a very consistent finger playing style. And we'll talk about your playing style a bit later on as well. But yeah, it sounds so consistent and so nicely wrapped in a bow, really, really tight. You're playing so fast, and the transition between notes there is really, really good. And we'll talk a bit about distortion in a minute. First off, what is the bass that you're using for that?
Yeah, so that's the bass. That's the Yamaha.
Yes, I mean,
that's the bass. What bass do you play? Yes, the true big brain bass player. Yeah, it's the Yamaha BB615, my absolute baby, the one I absolutely adore. So playing that, so that does actually have a dark glass preamp in it, but that is set to flat. Everything, generally speaking, the bass, even though it's active, I do have things set to flat a lot of the time. And I've got equal blends of the P and the J pickup. I only really tend to tweak the active preamp. It really kind of actually, I generally actually have quite a flat EQ. I only ever really change it. Not some. It kind of depends on the amp, the cabinet I'm using, and also the venue I'm playing in, and sometimes what the sound guy is like. I only ever make little tweaks.
Yeah,
it does tend to be a very, very level sound. So that's what the Yamaha is putting out, a very level sound.
Nice. So then from the bass, we've got that preamp on there. Is it doing much before we're getting into the amp or whatever amp sim that is that I can hear?
There isn't actually a amp sim on this, so I was going to look. I can't really rig up my the TC Electronic I have, because that unfortunately is downstairs, and again, as we're coming to personal circumstances, setting that up would be a little tricky, and I don't have an amp sim, so that is actually a pure DI signal going straight into. Yeah, that is actually a straight DI signal going into Mixcraft. Yeah, there's no actual amp sim going on.
I mean, now you say it, it has got that clip. That's why when you said it was all flat, I was like, yeah, I can kind of tell that, because it is quite present in the punch that it's got. Not present from like a treble point of view, but I suppose it does have those kind of DI elements to it. But it definitely seemed a lot more coloured than that. You saw the shock on my face then. I didn't realise that. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Just straight up DI sound. So, have you got any distortion going on there as well?
Yeah, so I have it's a little bit more. It's not just a simple straight chain. There's a little bit more going on there. It goes from so it goes from like me usual gubbins. I've got like me wireless relay machine. First thing goes into the compressor, then it goes into the classic microtubes B7K dark glass. Yeah, the classic. And again, that is generally speaking a very flat EQ. Everything is set to 12 o'clock, but I have got the grunt setting on because that adds so much more low end, but not muffly low end, just heavy low end.
Is this the like the version 2 with the cab sim on there, or is it this?
No, this is the very basic B7K. I bought this in 2016, and I bought it secondhand. So yeah, this was kind of like, kind of middle of because this B7K, I remember that was around about 2011, 2012 it was released.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, it probably would be early because it's not that sophisticated. It's not the B7K2 or anything like the special versions or the 10-year anniversary. It's just very, very basic B7K. After that, though, it goes into a line selector. So it goes into a Boss LS2.
That's what I've got too.
Fellow big brain. Yeah. So yeah, what I do with that then is I then do a send and return to a Zoom B3. And that on the B3 I've got a man after my own heart. Yeah, so then I've got in order, I've then got a pretty sure it's a clone, but I basically got a bass drive, bass. I think it's a bass 10s DI clone. Then I've got a very, very basic, just kind of stock analog chorus, and then a delay. Chorus is a little bit more pronounced than the delay. The delay actually isn't really, you won't, it's very, very short decay on it. It doesn't, you don't hear it. There's not a lot of repeats on it. It's actually just there to actually bulk out the sound, actually. It's kind of my way of kind of adding more layers to the track, adding more layers to the sound, even without, just piling loads of distortion EQ in there. It's something I picked up from Advent Sorrow's bassist, because I saw he's using a delay pedal, and I thought, that's a bit unusual. I thought this is kind of extreme metal. It's not the big spacey, you don't really have a big spacey sound extreme metal, generally speaking. So what's the delay doing there? But actually, you can actually use it to bulk out the sound a little bit and have a little bit of a sustain on there.
Is that engaged in that clip?
Yeah, that's engaged. So you've got bass drive, chorus, and then a delay. So it's delayed chorus, not chorus delay.
Yeah.
Actually, no, it's chorus. No, hang on. Is it chorus? Hang on. It'll be chorus distorted. That's then being delayed, if I've got that right.
My brain's feeling delayed.
Yeah. But then what happens is that then goes into, so you kind of got an A/B mix and the line selector. So you've got your pure kind of the dry mix, as it were, is basically all B7K. But then you've got a bit of B7K going into the Zoom, which is then distorted even more, add a bit more drive to it, bit of tone shaping as well. Then it goes into chorus, then it goes into delay, and that's to one kind of avoids tone sapping from the extra drive, the gain, and the delay. And also, so with your kind of dry signal, you still got that really big low end sound. So it kind of gives you something a little bit more unique than you would just get in extreme metal, which is just, lots of preamp or lots of gain. I kind of get to have, if we hear the high notes, there's kind of a bit more of a pop to it. It kind of explodes out a little bit more. Whereas the lower notes, obviously, they're just more throaty and heavy and growly. The chorus and delay, the chorus doesn't really show up there as much. It shows up a lot more on the high notes.
Yeah. And I had a suspicion that there was some signal splitting going on here from the sound of it. I started to kid myself then when you told me it was like all DI, no amp sims and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe that's what I was hearing. But no, I was right. So, and you can tell that because it's a very consistent low end, and you can hear the normal clean tone, and then you can tell that there's a split channel with the distorted layer almost sprinkled on top, as opposed to mixing in with that main tone. Now, some people might prefer the sound of like not doing that, and they've got it all in that distorted sound, but actually in a mix, especially in a live situation where you perhaps got a bit less control as to when you engage a drive pedal, you might drop out of the mix where it changes the way that it sounds so much. Where the frequencies are being changed. And so doing that, and which is what I've got on my board as well now, it's a little bit different in the way that I'm going to set up. It's kind of in the middle stage at the minute, but yeah, you're not affecting that tone, you're just adding on top of it, and I can hear that within that clip. So yeah, I would recommend to all bass players that you go and try it with something like the Boss LS2, because it's so much fun to experiment with, and if you're a big pedal guy, it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's I think as well for the live, not so much recording, because obviously you can take it DI, of course, but for live, of course, if you try and you don't want to kind of sap out your tone. And obviously, you can get pedals that don't do that, but obviously it's a much higher price range. And obviously, that makes it very inaccessible and difficult. This is a very cheap and very cost-effective solution, because that is my approach. I like the cost-effective approach rather than just big bucks. I like, listen, not cheap. If there's something important, something necessary, I'll get it, but I like cost-effective.
At one point, I nearly had a £250 compressor sitting next to a £20 SansAmp clone on my board. I was like, well, maybe this isn't quite right. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. And interesting that you've got the B3, but essentially using it for effects and not like the amps that are built into
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm only using it for the effects. That may change in the future. That's the DI. Maybe there's a kind of a way I could use like a really especially once I kind of go into the online suite. Maybe I can get a really disgusting sounding kind of amp sim I could put on there. And eventually there might even be more sounds I get, because I've got two bands, and that's the thing, is if I use a very similar sound for both bands, but I might make some very subtle changes. And the good thing with obviously digital effects is that you can swap between different profiles very quickly. So I've got my dry signal is never going to change, that's always there, but my wet signal, I can always tweak that a little bit.
You can have a wet signal, or you can have a soggy signal, depending on what band.
To be fair though, actually, it doesn't really change between both bands. I mean, the main difference I would say was a Volnir. I just started looking at doing pick playing, kind of rather than doing fingers, just going to pick full time, because it's such a more aggressive sound that I'm going for. Also, it's a one guitar band as well. I could get away with a lot more distortion if I wanted to, and I could just do like a very simple chin if I wanted to, not worry about the low end so much in the live context because there's only one guitar. But I thought, no, I like having that low end, even in that context. I like having the low end come through.
You almost need that low end and then some, for a single back, as opposed to sacrificing one.
Especially in metal as well, where it's like, you matching up with the kick drum is so important. The kick drum is one of your best friends. With something like, say, rock, for example, you might not have to worry. Again, especially with that kind of way a lot of bassists do rock nowadays, you're kind of breaking out the circle, doing your own thing, having your melodic, colourful elements.
You're still following that kick drum overall, but you're not being so with a lot of metal, or if you're doing, tight breakdowns and things like that, it's very much going to be syncopated with that kick pedal, isn't it? So it's quite different approaches, but ultimately the same goal.
Yeah, it has. You have to have that tightness, and you need the low end for metal. You have to have it.
That's why I love compression as well, though, because it gives you that nice consistent punch. You kind of set it to how you want it, and compression can work in different ways, which is overall, mate, I love the sound of that bass, and I could pick things apart about it that I could hear in my own ears, and I love being able to do that. So thank you so much for sharing it with everybody, and let us know in a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube what you think, and whether you're now going to buy an LS2 as well, because I think you all should.
Do it.
But now, let's move on to our last segment. So the last segment of the show is normally a question that I just turn into the big bass debate, but this time the question itself has come from our guest Kristian, who is wanting to talk about, or brought to my attention a topic that I'd not really considered or had any experience with before, but as you said, it is something that is important to talk about, to help people that may be struggling with something such as this, or to prevent actually some people in the future having these issues, because it's not even something that I had even thought about, but I feel like after this discussion I'm definitely going to be more aware about the things that I can do, so I'll kind of let you take the floor on this and avoiding and managing injuries with bass playing and being a musician. So take the floor, man.
So mainly, like I said, when I reached out to you, I said I was going to kind of come forward with the main issue I've had has been carpal tunnel. But then thinking about it, there's another one I can also bring to the fore, and this was a purely bass-induced injury, and that was back pain, specifically lower back pain, which I can talk about as well. I can start with that if you'd like, because chronologically, in my case, my Yamaha BB 615, I love it so much, and one thing I loved about it was how heavy it was. I loved the heft of it and the feel. But I made a very something very dumb. I spent many hours sat on a bed, flat-legged, so legs parallel, not crossed over, so no kind of like base sitting. I was kind of sat, with the hook of it on my right leg as a right-handed player. I spent many hours hunched over that, sat on my bed playing bass, and a couple of days of that, I had horrendous back pain, like not almost struggling to walk in place, even like had to sit down during rehearsals. And the back's never really been right since. So I kind of have to effectively really deal with lower back pain, probably realistically for the rest of my life, managing it for the rest of my life because of that. It is something very manageable. I was given exercise. I've been seeing physiotherapies, had scans done, and it's something I can manage as long as I look after my back, do the usual lower back helps, and lots of exercises, stretches, looking after my back, good posture. It's something I've been able to manage, but that was something that was purely a bass induced injury, was effectively bad posture, but affecting my back. Because if we think about it, what we're slinging around our necks and our backs are supporting a huge piece of wood and metal, and your back does a hell of a lot of work supporting that, whether you just sat down playing it on, sat down playing it, playing on the sofa on your bed like I did, or standing up. Your back is under a lot of strain, and you have to be careful. If something's not feeling right, if your back's hurting, you need to down tools and take a break, think about what you're doing, because otherwise, I said, my back pain is not as serious as probably most people, like some people's has been, but it is something I'm probably going to have to deal with for the rest of my life.
A lot of people that I to come into contact with online are normally, I'd say, within like 40s to 60s, age range, who people that have been lugging around these big amps for a long time and have had these old heavy basses that over time has just kind of worn them down, has had this effect that you might not necessarily notice in the short term, actually, and then in the long term, when you're getting older, that's when it really starts having an impact. So I think a big thing is, and like you say, because heavy basses isn't necessarily always a bad thing, because the quality of wood is there, it's resonating through the body. It's not always, when I pick up a heavy bass, this old Ibanez I've got behind me is a heavy bass because it's old, good quality stuff that it's made out of, and all the components. But you do need to take that into account of, right, actually, how is this going to affect me in the long term? So talking just about the back pain, then how can people try and prevent this if they start to feel those pains?
I would definitely say it'd be good if I kind of visually show because obviously this is the purely audible form. It's very hard for me to kind of show a few things that I started doing, and I've been taught that kind of really help with prostate. I wish I could do that.
Look at the stretches he's doing. Oh God, everyone, you should see it. It's so flexible.
He's doing a handstand.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I would say definitely what you should definitely do if you've got any kind of concerns is speak to your doctor, speak to a proper physiotherapist, and get proper medical and professional advice. Don't leave it to chance. Don't leave it to quack remedies or treatments or anything like that. Definitely get professional advice on it. So I wish I could kind of show and demonstrate a few things. But I suppose the main thing I would say is take care of your back, because when you're playing bass, definitely do that, because otherwise you could do yourself some permanent damage.
Yeah, that is going to affect your daily life and not just your bass playing life. Even though arguably that is the only life that matters. You want to be able to preserve yourself, basically, and it's something that you might think, I'll be okay, or I haven't noticed that, but
optimism bias. People, it's very easy to think that's not going to happen to me, or it'd be an afterthought, but by the time it could be too late. By the time it happens, it'll happen. You'd be like, oh no, why didn't I think about that? It'll become important when it's too late, unfortunately. So it's definitely, don't fall victim to optimism bias. Do pay attention to it.
And getting help is, the best advice I think you can give, because there's a lot of, especially in the UK, a lot of people very stiff upper lip and like, no, I'll be fine,
Mm,
I just crack on. No, that's a very old-fashioned way of thinking a lot of the time, and actually you don't want to be living with those
yeah,
problems. You want to nip it in the bud and
exactly.
make sure that you're doing things with the best practices that are advised by professionals that actually know what they're talking about. So
Yeah,
yeah, great advice. Um,
yeah.
so I wonder if you can now start talking about the carpal tunnel.
Yeah, so this has kind of been going on since kind of the middle of this year. It didn't actually start as carpal. It's not the only thing initially. I've initially developed in my right hand tendon sheath issues, like an inflammation here. It was caused by basically at the beginning of the year, I was basically destroying and rebuilding my house. I was doing a lot of very intense exercise, HIIT training, so handstands, a lot of press ups. I was playing bass, most evenings. I was going to work. I had a lot going on. I was using my hands a lot, and so that started initially as tendon sheath. So I kind of had inflammation going on here. Um, that's relatively manageable, though. That's something you go to a physiotherapist, do your exercises, you rest, you support it, you ice it. It's very manageable. But if you kind of get like I would say now as well, if you get any kind of pain or issues in your wrist and your hands, go see your doctor, go see a physio. Don't let it get worse. So that could have been very manageable. Then in my left hand, I started in my tendon sheath at the base of my thumb. I was getting pain, I was getting weakness, and that's something called tenosynovitis, so which was the inflammation of my tendon sheath. Um, and I was managing that as well, physiotherapy. But I did something a bit dumb. I helped my girlfriend's folks. I helped them move this concrete tabletop, and the next day I was in A&E because the pain in my wrist wouldn't stop. I tried Voltarol, ice splinting it because I was wearing like thumb splints, and eventually it did settle down. And I kind of kept on doing things with it because with something like a tendon sheath issue like that, you can to an extent work through it. But again, as I said, I'm not a medical professional here. You would need to speak to your doctor or professional, but you kind of have to exercise it like a muscle. You have to exercise it to keep it going. Not long after that, I then started getting the symptoms of carpal tunnel because my physio sat me down and this test he did. And he said, you're kind of starting to get the beginnings of this. And this is the thing, this wasn't actually a base induced accident. This was kind of my personal life causing it. But I kind of thought, okay, let's take his advice. I'll do what I need to. One day after kind of like helping my sister out with her house, doing some building work, sat down, I played bass, and I kind of started getting this tightness in my wrist and like tingling in the fingers. And I was like, right, what's going on? Did my research and everything pointed towards carpal tunnel. And this was in June around about my birthday, which was a great birthday present to myself. And that was kind of like the bottom effectively dropped out of my world because unlike, say, the tenosynovitis, for example, where I could kind of, I could still hold my bass, I could still work through that. It wasn't really essential with my fingers. It was affecting, it was aggravating that area. Because what happens with carpal tunnel, and this is often tendonitis and carpal tunnel are quite common for musicians because of the repetitive nature of what we do.
Draining disorder.
Yeah, so there's a nerve that runs along what's called the carpal tunnel in your wrist, and the median nerve controls the thumb and your index and middle finger. If there's a swelling in the wrist, that can compress the nerve, and that causes weakness, pain, tingling, even sometimes becoming asensate. So the tips of your fingers you won't actually be able to feel them. You'll lose all feeling. Thankfully, I never got to that point. The most I had was tingling and flare up, so pain in my kind of wrist area. But I remember it was about 2 months after this happened. I tried to play the first gig because I thought, okay, right, if I keep my wrist, what happens with carpal tunnel is that our wrist is bent, so towards us or away from us, and because there's not a lot of room in the carpal tunnel area, when your tendons start moving and all the tissues start moving, it can compress the median nerve very easily. If you've got your hand bent, and this often can be sometimes we do with bass or guitar, we have a very bent wrist, almost 90 degrees sometimes either way. It compresses everything in the carpal tunnel. Your tendons or your tissues get inflamed, and that inflammation compresses the nerve. So I stopped playing bass though as soon as I felt the symptoms of it, because rest was the best option, and I was doing everything. I was using gels, painkillers, ice, but that's the thing. I had to stop. I stopped playing bass. One, because I didn't want to aggravate it, and I wanted to rest, and two, I was basically terrified. I thought, what if I pick it up and it's going to be pain? What if it was? The thought of actually picking my bass was actually terrifying for about a month or so.
Horrible.
And it's one of the most horrible things I've ever been through. It's not the worst medical condition one could ever experience. Of course, you can recover from it, you can be treated, it can be managed. But what matters is what we go through. What matters is how we feel about something, not what we go through. And, as musicians, this is our life, this is what we're passionate about, it defines us.
Yeah.
For me especially as well, it absolutely defines me.
Huge fear for all of us, isn't it? Like if something happened and you're to lose something to do with your hands, that's accessing that enjoyment and often release of stress, your coping mechanism sometimes, that music and bass playing can be. So
it was almost like an attack on who it was. It just had destroyed who I was in some ways. It was one of the worst things I have been through. I did start to get better after I had a steroid injection, because there's two treatments. One is a steroid injection into the area, and another is the surgery, so the carpal tunnel release surgery, which is obviously quite common because a lot of people, it is, I want to say relatively common, not everyone's getting it done, but it is one that comes up. It's known about. If you say carpal tunnel, most people are going to have heard of that, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I had a steroid injection, and that made a big improvement. So I was able to play gigs. I was able to rehearse, play gigs. I still didn't practice though, and that has been one of the hardest things. Is that I can't just come home, pick up my bass, write something, noodle around, work on something, do lessons with my tutor online. It was awful. Even though the fact I could still play gigs, I could still do that, there was this just constant pit of fear and worry of a part of my soul was missing. The fact, I just couldn't also just go home, pick up bass freely without any worry and just make music. Play music.
Adds a barrier.
Yeah. So initially I was doing pretty well with my left hand, splinting it. I could play gigs, so the treatment was working, the rest was working, and I say the injection took away maybe about 70% of my symptoms. But unfortunately, more recently, about a month ago, I started getting symptoms in my right hand, and I think the reason for that being is I've compensated for my left hand, because my right hand, changing my lifestyle, I've had to compensate for the left hand with the right hand. So I'm kind of went in a way back to square one, but doubly worse. And again, my symptoms are relatively mild. There's a good chance I can hopefully actually avoid surgery. And I think for me, like you said, musicians, the great fear of anything happening to our hands, but I think anything happening to our hands as well, like any kind of procedure or operation, I think that would, safe to say, it makes us all cringe. It would be terrifying because of the what ifs.
Absolutely. And then that's completely out of pun not intended, out of your hands then, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. So at the moment, the culmination of this has been I've had to basically down tools now. I had to speak to my consultant, and speaking with my bands, I was terrified of telling them that, sorry lads, this is it. I can't do this anymore. I need to get better. Basically, effectively downing tools for 6 months. So no gigs, no practicing, no rehearsals, and also just in terms of the rest of my lifestyle, no gaming. I'm a woodworker, none of that as well. No DIY. I've kind of stopped any intricate use of my hands just because I want to get this finally recover from this. I want it polished off so I can get not just my musical life back, but the rest of my life in general, but especially my musical life. And so obviously the reason I'm sharing this, of course, is not for me, just not so much worries me. I can do it in plenty of different forms, but obviously, in fact, being able to share this with musicians has been fantastic. Those who've had issues themselves, those who've actually gone through it. Also, people just supporting me. My bandmates as well. They have been phenomenal in supporting me through it in both bands. They've been absolutely fun, and there's so many of the musicians and people I've spoken to have been very, very helpful for it, and help me and supporting me through it. But yeah, the reason I want to come and share this is I want to tell people that look after your hands, very, very simply, whether it's what you're doing musically, so the way you're playing, your posture, your technique, how much you're playing, the way you're playing, and your lifestyle as well. Look after your hands, because if you have your music limited or taken away from you, it is genuinely one of the worst things. For me personally, it has been one of the worst things I've ever been through. And I know with people like ourselves, how passionate we are about what we do, it is one of the most devastating things you probably will go through. And I don't want anyone else to end up going through what I have been and what I will go through as well before I recover.
Yeah, it's with these disorders, the things you enjoy makes it worse, and that is a horrible and a hard pill to swallow. That
Yeah.
The things you want to do are what is making it worse, essentially. And
Yeah.
I cannot say this enough. This sucks, and I'm really sorry that you have to go through all of this. And thank you so much for coming on here as some kind of platform to share this, because people need to hear this type of thing, because it's the other side, isn't it? We talk about all the fun, all the gear, all the things we love, but how to protect that, and we can only do that through learning through other people. So thank you.
No, it's absolutely, that's an absolute pleasure. If this even just helps, just if one person, it stops one person happening to that, that's absolutely worth it.
Absolutely.
Again, I will say it again. Look after your hands. Definitely. And look after yourselves as well, of course, because there's other things that can happen that could limit you. But as musicians, look after your hands. I can't say it enough.
Obviously, the best bit of advice I suppose we can give from this is to get things treated early. As soon as you think something might be up, don't put it off. Go and get it checked out. If it can be diagnosed sooner, the more that you can do about it. And you don't want to pedal yourself so far that you cannot pedal back, or that you begin limiting yourself. And even if it takes that 6 months of not playing or scaling things back, in the long run, my God, you'll thank yourself. Because you don't want to be naive and think, I'll be fine. It's a little bit of
or it'll happen to other. It only happens to other people.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you should never hurt to do anything that you're doing. If something in your technique or your playing hurts or isn't right, or you're straining yourself, come back to yourself. Think. I actually picked this up from a vocalist, actually, from extreme metal vocals, for example, there's obviously a big risk of causing damage there.
That's
and
comparison I was thinking about the whole
time. So you should never hurt yourself to play an instrument or do what you love doing. It should not hurt. So if something hurts in your playing, or you're doing something in your life that hurts when you play, get that checked out. And and don't try and work through the pain. Don't try and be tough. Don't try and be macho. These hands, they are delicate. They might not feel like it, especially if nothing's ever bad's happened, but something could go wrong, or you could do something wrong a lot of times and build up a lot of damage. And especially something like, say, carpal tunnel, where it's a nerve issue, it's so hard. Once you pedal it forwards, it's so much harder to pedal it back. So much harder to pedal it back and pedal it forwards.
They say that with lots of like manual handling training, going back to like the back as well. It's an easy thing to prevent, but a hard thing to treat once you've got to that stage. To get back to where it was is a difficult one. So make sure you are bending those knees when you're lifting your Ampeg SVT 810s, and you are taking it easy on the old digits, because you won't know what you've lost until you've lost it.
Exactly. To quote Cinderella from that fantastic album Winter, really good album.
Exactly. And that seems like a beautiful bow to put on this tale. Unless, was there anything else you wanted to add to that one?
No, I think we've covered everything, and I think you've elaborated on that fantastically as well. I think that's summed it up brilliantly.
Amazing. Cool. Well, we will end our podcast there then. Kristian, thank you so much for reaching out and for doing this with me. It's been a fantastic episode, and I hope people at home have enjoyed it as well.
No, it's been brilliant. I've absolute pleasure doing it.
Of course, mate. Anytime. If you guys want to reach out to myself or to Kristian, get in touch with me on Instagram at Johnny Dibble. If you're listening, should I say, this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the video. Let me know that we're doing a good job on here, because I don't know if the numbers aren't there. I don't know. So leave a comment down below. All that jazz, you know what to do. Also, if you're listening anywhere where you can leave a review, please do so. It helps with algorithms and things like that. Algorithms, that's a really deep part of music theory that people don't know about. Kristian, remind the people at home where they can find you and your bands.
Yeah, so you can find both bands, Volney and ASMR. You can find us both on Instagram and Facebook. You can find myself on Instagram, so Skogen _bassist. Skogen's my stage name, if you're wondering. Skogen spelled SKOGEN _, and hopefully you know how to spell bassist. Otherwise, you probably yeah. I hope everyone here I hope people listening to this podcast will know how to spell bassist. Don't find me on Facebook. It's a dumpster fire. It's all memes. It's all trash. So just find me on Instagram and hit me up if you want to. Always love to hear from people.
Absolutely. That's one thing I've learned from doing this online thing, is that people are the best. They can be the worst, but mostly they're the best, and they're great, and they love having a good time, especially us bass players, right? Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I'll see you next time.